All right. Good morning, everyone. Wow, what a great group. I think we're joined by over 80 schools, which speaks to how timely the topic of AI agents is. Whether to use an AI agent and how to use it, it's something everyone's grappling with. And we hope to share some insights with you on that today. My name is Saj Butt. I'm head of business development at Enrollment Resources. I'm joined by Justin Hinchcliffe, someone I've known for many years and consider a friend. Justin has led marketing and enrollment growth across two career colleges for over a decade. As director of marketing, he oversaw the AI admissions agent pilots at both schools, and they reached a 64% contact rate across 2,200 plus leads. So really impressive numbers, and also cutting response time from 4 hours to under 10 seconds. So in this session, Justin's going to share what he's learned running both deployments, the wins, and what he'd do differently. I'm also joined by our CTO at Enrollment Resources, Andrew Becker. And Andrew is going to be, towards the end of the talk, Andrew's going to share a live demo of the Connect IQ AI agent in action. So we're going to see the entire flow from when they submit an inquiry, what happens using our live UI interface. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Justin, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Satch. Excited to be here. Excited to talk about the future. Excited to talk about AI. It's going to be a good one.
Love it. So we thought we'd start with a quick poll that Sophie will launch for us. Let's give it a minute for everyone to complete it, and then we'll get into it. As we move through the talk today, please feel free to ask your questions through the chat. We will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. All right, let's get into it. So I want to start with a positioning statement. There are a lot of AI agents out there. Some have legitimate use cases, and others seem like a Me Too product. Connect IQ is not AI for AI's sake. It's a virtual advisor enhanced admissions agent that uses virtual advisor prospect intelligence. So program interest, readiness, motivations, barriers, personality or social styles to respond instantly, qualify fit, and book warm appointments. Over the years, 8 million prospective students have completed the 30 question career assessment in Virtual Advisor. So we inject all of that into our Connect IQ agent so it can have really personal one-to-one conversations with each individual prospect. That includes voice chats in different languages. It also includes one-to-one personally or tailored text messages, and even emails. So it can use all that great intel to craft its own text messages and emails. So we're going to do a demo of the AI agent towards the end. But let's get into some questions that we've got for Justin. So Justin, let's talk about your real world pilot story. What was the problem that Brighton College was trying to solve before deploying the AI agent?
Yeah, it's a good one. So the biggest pain point that we were trying to solve is we were trying to think about from a marketing and a revenue kind of ops position, how can we grow the revenue? How can we kind of scale without kind of essentially dumping about a bunch of unqualified leads onto our admissions team? We know that we had a really good thing going on where we had Google Leads kind of set up where they're passing quality leads onto our admissions reps, and that was great. But we wanted to try different marketing channels. We wanted to try Meta, we wanted to try TikTok, we want to try YouTube. We want to kind of get our name out there and try some of these. But the problem was in the past, we've tried some of these different marketing channels. And a lot of times when we were passing those inquiries onto our admissions team, they didn't like it. The leads weren't qualified. Yeah, I think, if you've managed these marketing campaigns in the past, hey, I never inquired. There's a lot of those. And so we didn't want to just be passing, because the thing is with those different marketing channels, it's very easy to generate the inquiries. The cost per lead is significantly lower than something like Google. So you can essentially turn the dial and generate leads very easily. but we didn't want to just be passing on 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, whatever the number is, leads onto our admissions team, and then having them kind of suffer, kind of working through unqualified leads. And so that's when we started to brainstorm. And my background obviously has been sales marketing, but I've also been an early adapter in kind of any kind of technology, from websites, 20 years ago to now with AI. So we started to think about, can we use some agents to kind of help with some of the initial kind of outreach for that. And the numbers were really strong. So yeah, I'd love to kind of continue the conversation and talk about that. But I guess the shift there was, instead of just generating thousands and thousands of leads and then potentially hurting the revenue of because our sales team is working those unqualified leads, is just passing on quality leads to the admissions rep. That was really the pain point that we were trying to do, while trying to figure out how we can test out these different marketing channels to see which ones are working, and just kind of overall kind of scale.
Got it. And your pilot was over a pretty substantial sample set of over 2,000 leads. We all know Meta leads are pretty low converting, in the 2% range, low intent, low conversion. Is that why you started with Meta leads? Because they're so difficult, they're challenging, and you didn't want to, kind of exhaust admissions reps with leads like that? Or what was the thinking behind beginning with Meta leads?
Yeah, so our target audience is kind of mature students. There's students that are looking to go back to school to receive education. So the kind of age range is kind of in that kind of mid 20s to 30s, and so Meta is a perfect kind of area for that. We know that our target audience is there. We know there's a lot of people. The problem with Meta is it's you're promoting to a broad audience, right? You're pushing your lead out there, and you're getting a lot of people that are somewhat interested but not really interested. They're kind of window shopping a little bit, but there are pieces of gold in that network. You just have to find them, right? And so you can generate these leads quite easily, but the problem really is you don't want to be sending them all to your admissions team. Their time matters, right? So that was kind of our reasoning behind it. We know that our audience is there. It's just, how can we actually pull the ones who are really interested in going back to school to our admissions reps.
Right. Um, we shared some pretty impressive stats on the sign up page. A 64% contact rate at Brighton, 78% of qualified prospects booked an appointment. These are impressive numbers, especially so on Meta leads. What do you think drove these numbers?
Yeah, I love this question because they impress me as well. And I think the biggest thing that really drove those is, there's a lot of conversation around speed to lead in the industry, right? And so I think that was, in terms of, let's go into the contact rate, right? 64%. So that was actually a 2% lift over our Google ads. And I was scratching my head. I'm like, how are we getting a 2% lift in contact rate on lower quality leads? But when you start to think about all the advantages that an AI agent has, it becomes a little bit more clear, right? And so speed to lead, we can get a hold of these. The agent doesn't miss, right? So they fill in the form. It's contacting them in under a minute every single time. It doesn't miss. And there's some studies that have been done where you're 100 times more likely to contact the prospect if you reach them within 5 minutes versus waiting as little as 30 minutes. So 5 minutes versus 30 minutes, you're 100 times more likely to contact them. So we're hitting them every single time within 60 seconds. So the speed to lead is really impressive on that front. The other thing too is that I think that's kind of helping as well is the kind of range of coverage, right? And so when we're looking at setting up our admissions teams, right, I don't personally know too many schools that have coverage outside of the 9 to 5 or whatever kind of working hours that you have for your campus. But most of the schools kind of structure their teams so that they're working that 9 to 5. But what happens when the prospect is, also working, right? They're busy at work, they're coming home, they're having dinner, and maybe after dinner, they're like, hey, I'm thinking about how can I improve my life. Let me look at maybe some kind of education that can help me to do that. And they start to research and they fill in the form on the website. And that form comes in and it's 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., right? But how many teams are set up to actually call them at that time? Right. There's not too many that I know. So the actual after hours support that the agents can kind of cover, and it expands as well all the way over to the weekends as well when people are not working. There was a long weekend last summer where everyone was enjoying the tail end of the Canadian summer and everyone's off. It's 4 days off, but we came in on the Monday morning and we had 15 appointments booked for the admissions team for that week. It was beautiful, and that just happened all over the weekend when everyone's off and enjoying it. So I think the after hours coverage is really good. The speed to lead is really good. This is just all to do with the contact rate, and I think there are some other advantages as well for the speed to lead that I haven't talked about as well, which is essentially when people are doing their research, right? They're kind of researching in clusters, right? So they're not just researching your school, they're researching maybe 3 or 4 other schools that also have the same program. And so if you're able to get a hold of that prospect during those kind of the time that they're doing the research, you're able to build that rapport very early on with the prospect. And that trust and rapport that you're kind of building is also very good as well. And then if you want to dive into the qualification part, because I'd like to go down the chain. So it's like how many of those actually became qualified. And for the meta leads specifically, we found that only 51% of them were actually interested in coming and studying at the college. And so that number is actually really, really important because that gets into, the quality of the marketing channel, right? If we're going to send 2,000 leads over onto our admissions team and they're calling and half of them are not even interested, it's a huge morale waste for the team. It's going to waste their time as well, potentially revenue, when they would be better suited spending that time instead of chasing those leads, working the high quality students who actually want to study, right? So that's one thing to note, is like actually qualifying them through a discovery call. And then the ones that actually were interested, genuinely interested to come and study at the school, the 78% appointment booking rate, I'm very proud of. And you may ask, how do you get a 78% appointment booking rate with an AI agent? Like we maybe have troubles doing that alone with just our admissions team. Well, I think the way that you train these AI agents is the same way that you would even train your admissions team, right? You have to really be providing value over the phone for that appointment, right? And what is something that people value even more than money? Most people nowadays, it's sad, you probably know, it's time, right? Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's time, right? So if I'm a prospect and I'm going to come in, I'm going to meet with one of your admissions rep, and what is the value that I'm going to receive for coming in and meeting with them, right? And so you have to have those value props baked in to the delivery of the framing of the appointment, right? And so when you have that with the AI agent and they're over the phone and they're talking about, how this is potentially going to be they're not going to word it like it's a life-changing event, but they kind of set it up so it's like they're going to cover, tuition, scheduling, job market outcomes, everything over that meeting with the admissions rep. You do 2 things. Number one is your appointment rates are going to go up quite a bit, right? But the other thing too is you're kind of setting up your admissions team to slam dunk that appointment. They're actually going to want to show up for the appointment because they see the value. And you're kind of framing them as kind of the authority for talking about all those various areas that, the prospect actually wants. So yeah, that's how we got a really good appointment booking rate. It's just kind of baking in some of those industry best practices into the agent.
Got it. You mentioned how critical it is to train your AI agent just as you would train an admissions rep. I'm going to come back to that question a little bit further in the conversation, but I do have a follow-up question. What changed or what was different between the Brighton and the Alexander pilots? You had different results. Is it because you were targeting different demographics, or was the messaging different? Was the expected outcome different? Uh, what would you attribute to the different results for the two school brands?
Yeah. So they're two completely different brands. Brighton College is really focused on vocational training. Students are essentially going there to um, uh, essentially make a career change or upgrade their career path. It's really focused on that. Alexander College is more academic focused. Their target audience is more international students. So when we actually set up the campaigns for Alexander College, they also had some really good success, but it's really cool actually. So we configured it so we had, you know, I think they have up to 20 different campaigns running right now across 10 different countries, where essentially they're doing their international recruitment with the first kind of outreach for the AI agent. And it's very cool. You can, configure different languages and stuff. So you can have this thing set up so it's multi-language. But they're also seeing in different regions internationally some very high success rates as well, up to 80% appointment booking rates there as well. So structurally, they're kind of different that way.
Right. Uh, Walk us through the optimal workflow from inquiry to booked appointment when you have an AI agent as part of that sequence.
Yeah, really good question. So the workflow is similar to like best practices that you would configure for your school, right? So for your admissions team, you may have an outreach cadence, right? That essentially you want them to follow, right? And so that outreach cadence may be, schedule like it could be 10 contact points over 7 days. Like everyone's different, right? Everyone has a different kind of cadence, right? And so you need to kind of build a similar cadence into the kind of agent workflow. So if they're sending an email and an SMS immediately, and then maybe triggering a phone call within a few minutes after but depending on if they've actually responded or not, that is one. But essentially, you want to open up with a discovery question, an open-ended question to get the student kind of talking. What is the goals? What's the reason that they're inquiring? And then kind of go through a series. And this is where it kind of gets a little bit customized, I guess, depending on the school, is what are the types of questions that you'd like to kind of ask to figure out. So for Brighton College, it's, why did you inquire into the program? What is the different kind of like, what's your schedule like? Are you currently working? Are you a Canadian citizen? Because it kind of we need some of this information for part of the admissions process, right? And we ask a few other kind of questions that kind of go down the pipeline a little bit to kind of determine if they're actually interested in going back and if they have the time and schedule. But all this information kind of gets routed through.
Got it. Um, at what stage did human admissions reps matter the most?
Yeah.
Where are they kind of non-negotiable?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so you can never replace uh, obviously human connections. Like even what we're doing right now, just conversating, you can never replace it, right? And I think that rapport, like after the lead's been qualified, that rapport, the relationship building, the process that um, the human needs to do to kind of the admissions team needs to do to support the student on their educational efforts, that's you can never replace that. So that's always going to be there. I will add as well, like people talk about the human in the loop, right? This is kind of common if you're into the AI space. You don't want the AI agent making critical admissions decisions. You want to kind of be doing the qualification discovery call. But those kind of like critical kind of decisions, you always want the human advisors to kind of be handling those and kind of building that long-term kind of relationship with the student, the prospect.
Hmm. Got it. Um, yeah, I mean, it's undeniable that there's a critical place for the human element as part of the admissions process. That will never change. You guys have been doing this now using an AI agent for many, many months. You've had a lot of learning from it. You fine-tuned it. It's always getting better. But in hindsight, looking back, what would you have done differently if you were launching again from day one?
Yeah, definitely. So we've learned a lot through this process, and I'm a bit of an AI nerd, so I can talk about some of the mechanics of some of the things that kind of go on behind the scenes. But the first thing, absolutely, hands down, that I would do differently is I would make sure that the system that I'm using has anti-hallucination built in. And so you talk about, okay, what is hallucination? This is essentially when the model, you rely a little bit too much on the model to follow, what it's going to say, everything. Occasionally, it'll slip up, right? And it may be like once out of 100, maybe once out of 1,000, depending on the quality of the model that you're using. But if you don't have any anti-hallucination, it can't just be techniques. Like the platform itself has to have a layer built in to ensure this. So I personally went through this very early on in the pilot. We had the agent essentially say something that was, off brand, came off the wrong way. And, it is subtle, but it was enough that definitely it was something that I had to correct. I had to personally call the prospect back, kind of apologize. And at that point, we're like, okay, we cannot use this system, right? And so we started to do some research. Okay, what is the various types of anti-hallucination technology out there? And so I will say this as well: not all the anti-hallucination stuff is the same. So if you think that you're covering yourself by just putting in the system prompt, hey, don't talk about this or don't talk about that, or this is our pricing, follow this or that. That's not enough. Even the latest and the greatest models, they're still, they're going to fail every once in a while. If you really want to protect yourself for brand and compliance, you got to make sure that this anti-hallucination technology is built in. And so I would do thorough research on that. The best ones that I've seen. Do you want me to get it like into the nitty gritty of the technical, or kind of leave it
A
at
little
that?
bit, sure. Yeah,
Sure.
I think
Okay.
hallucination is top of mind for everyone looking at an AI agent. And this is also a great segue into the next bit that I want to talk about around compliance. So yeah, if you would go into a little bit more detail around hallucination. Uh,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah,
So
the sort of the background mechanics of it that we're not always privy to.
yeah. So essentially, when you have a voice agent, right, you have a large language model that generates some content in the background, and that content goes out, right, and it gets sent to a TTS provider, text to speech. That's where it actually is spoken, and you hear it, right. And so inputting there, right, you want something that's going to validate the information before the user ever hears it. And so what traditionally, like for chatbots, what they do is they have another LLM, which essentially has a function that says, hey, can you check this information? And if the information is good, it will kind of give it a secondary layer and kind of send it through. And it checks for things like brand guidelines, the knowledge base, is the information factual, the guardrails, is this topic of the conversation kind of going sideways, or is it okay? For example, maybe you don't want the prospect or the AI agent to really get into the job market. You want to leave that for your missions team, right? So if the prospect kind of steers the conversation in that way, you need the kind of hallucination, the system to be able to detect if it's going, array, right? So that is one thing. But the problem with the traditional method, when you're generating the content and you have another LLM agent kind of check it, is a lot of these other voice systems that are out there, they don't have a way to do this efficiently. So that one large language model call could be about 700 milliseconds just to check it. So for chatbots, that's okay. You can wait, it's spinning, and then it comes back. But for the voice agents, it's going to kill the whole user experience. It has to be coming back really fast, otherwise it doesn't sound natural, right? And so there's the kind of way that I've seen for the people who have been doing this. There's two systems. There's one is essentially when the content comes out, they don't check it, they just send it actually out. But they have a parallel process that goes through, and that parallel process actually checks. And it essentially is doing the judging, but it's still can take about 700 milliseconds before. So if a student is like, hey, do you guys have scholarships? And it hallucinates and says, yeah, we have scholarships. It will correct it, but it will already say, yeah. So say, yeah, we have scholarships. Oh, actually, sorry, I made a mistake. We don't have scholarships. So it's still checking, but the user experience, in my opinion, it's still not that great. The
Hmm.
best kind of anti-hallucination is similar to the judge technique, but you use a small language model, which is like a validation layer, and you're able to check it essentially every single turn before it goes out. It's just it has to be really fast. So that's one big thing. It's a little bit technical there. Sorry for the audience. It's not technical, but you want to make sure that you're using the system that kind of has something like this in place. Um, yeah,
Got it.
and then I
Sorry, go
get
ahead.
into other. Yeah, no. If you want, I can get into the next thing that I would do setting this up, or if someone's looking to set it up. Depends how deep you want to go for that.
Yeah, we'll talk about implementation in just a few minutes. But I just want to switch gears. I
Mm-hmm.
want to pause for a quick poll because we are almost at our halfway mark. So let's take a couple of seconds to just quickly fill this out. All right. Thanks everyone for filling that out and submitting it. Uh, okay. So the elephant in the room, compliance. Uh, you talked already about hallucinations. Uh, what happens when a student asks something outside of the approved scope? So it's a little bit of a different angle on hallucination. What would you say to a school that's worried about hallucinations or brand risk? Can you talk a little bit about guardrails?
Yep.
And maybe this is the right time to talk about the difference between a wrapper, which is what most agentic products are, versus building at the research layer.
Yeah, yeah, that's really so. If you're building a wrapper, you're using a system that essentially is a wrapper. You have no control over that system at all. And so a lot of these wrappers as well, they don't have any of the hallucination technologies kind of built into them. They're just plugging and playing different technology points. You know, the speech to text, the text to speech, the LM. They're just plugging them together and kind of making it work. But they haven't done any like real research grade work on them potentially, which is like, you know, are they actually building in that small language model to detect, you know, if it's going to hallucinate? And then in terms of like, yeah, setting it up for compliance, you're right. You need to tell the agent, okay, what are you allowed to talk about and what are you not allowed to talk about? And so you're allowed to have a discovery call, right? But you're not allowed. So for the guardrails, you're not allowed to discuss, you know, maybe detailed tuition discussions, job market outcomes, immigration topics, you know, anything that's really complex. You need to have like a list of information that you essentially don't want the agent to cover. And essentially, if the agent is kind of steering towards that, there's a few different ways to handle it, but essentially you can handle it so that before the agent even uh, has an output, it steers the conversation. It says, hey, you know, you got to set it up so that the admissions representative can handle it, right? So, hey, this is a really good question. You know, actually, I'm here to talk about, you know, your goals or aspirations, but the admissions representative would be the best person to really dive into those details. We can go ahead and set up an appointment for you to talk to him about that.
Mhm.
But then the best practice here as well is you don't want them to just go through and book the appointment if they haven't been really qualified. Before we do that, I just need to collect a little bit more information from you so that we can kind of set that up. And then they go through, you know, the remaining of the qualifying questions. So that is one way is you definitely want to make sure that those guardrails are in place. And then you want to make sure that the agents aren't going outside of the knowledge base as well. So your knowledge base has to be detailed enough where it has the information about your school that the agent can kind of use that. But you want to make sure that for sure it's not going to just be creating or making up information about your school. So it's good to have the information in there so that it can kind of use that as a guidelines. And then compliance, there's other things outside of just, you know, what can and can't say. there's the consent, right? And so there's a bunch of different ways to kind of do the consent. It kind of differs based on state and kind of country and region. So you definitely got to look into it. Um, Certain areas, the AI, they're essentially able to say that they're a virtual assistant. Other areas, they have to straight up say that they're an AI assistant, and you have to be able to offer an escalation pathway as well, so that if the prospect wants to, they can directly transfer the call to an admissions representative. So there has to be a few different things in place there to just make sure that you're kind of meeting those compliance areas. Same with recording consents and other things along those lines.
Mhm. Great. I was my next follow-up question was going to be about consent, opt-outs, call recording, disclosure, and escalation, but you just covered that. So we're going to step back out of the weeds. I think we're going to move on to implementation. Actually, sorry, I've got one more question for you, Justin, before we move on. How much admissions team training is needed when you're launching an AI agent and inserting them into your process?
Yeah, so that's actually the best part about this thing is the way we set up is essentially we connected the admissions calendars, and so the appointments are just flowing into the CRM and they're flowing into the calendars, and they're just meeting with them. So the actual admissions training is little to none. We just have to inform them that there's essentially an appointment booker that is an agent, and so we kind of gave the agent a unisex name. We call it Bex Ellis, which was our agent's name, because we wanted to A/B test different voices, and we thought, okay, if it's calling a male voice, female voice, what are the different performances and things like that. But essentially, the admissions team just needs to know that if there's an appointment coming from Bex Ellis, that was our AI admissions agent, and that they're kind of being handed off a quality kind of prospect. So yeah, pretty little, I would say, from that side of things.
We all know that there can be some cherry picking when it comes to leads, cherry picking by lead source, with some admissions people. So you guys were fully transparent in letting admissions reps know that this was an agent generated lead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is they can still see we let them see the source as well, so they can see if it's coming through from Google or Meta or wherever it is that we're generating the inquiry from. But they also get the full communication history as well, from that prospect. So before they meet with them, they actually get a bit of a summary, and they can kind of review and dive through. Okay, what were the goals for this person? What's their working schedule like? So they're not really starting from zero either. They're like, hey, I saw that you met with our admissions assistant. Let's go through some of your goals and stuff. And they can kind of like they can start the conversation a lot further down the pipeline versus just starting from scratch, right? So
You've used the agent at the top of the funnel to provide lift to your book rates, your contact rate, your speed to lead. We've talked about this quite a bit. We see use cases throughout the student life cycle, possibly even with alumni and beyond. How else would you use an agent, further into the funnel or maybe with students? Can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah. So that's something that we're really interested to potentially try in the future is, um, for example, getting the job market surveys done potentially through the career services. So easily we could set the agents up so that they're essentially, instead of emailing out a survey, actually following up with a phone call as well and saying, you know, kind of going through and collecting the same kind of information. That could easily be done. Um, I don't know if we'd use it for this, but I've heard of other people using it for like collection services as well in other areas. But I think anything where there's a survey involved or kind of like outreach or communication, you could be kind of using it in essentially any of those areas where you kind of are required to collect information.
Hmm. Yeah, we have a number of schools that do midpoint surveys or they do quarterly satisfaction surveys, always trying to gauge the health of the relationship, how engaged is the student, what's their student experience like. So definitely for something like that, this would be an optimal use case.
Yeah.
Awesome. Justin, thanks a lot for all that insight. We're going to switch gears a little bit, pivot over to Andrew, and Andrew's going to walk us through a demo of the Virtual Advisor and Connect IQ integration. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Virtual Advisor, I would love to talk about it more in detail after this call if you want to reach out. It is a proprietary platform that Enrollment Resources has created to deeply qualify prospects. So going from kind of mid intent to high intent, generating a wealth of information and insight about each individual, so they can be communicated to more effectively. And we have some really, really impressive numbers that speak to the effectiveness of that approach. Andrew, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Serge. So fresh from our R&D department are some new views in Virtual Advisor for you to see what is going on with all this AI agent activity. So I'm going to share my screen here and give you guys our first public preview of the new UI. So you might be familiar with this view. If you've used Virtual Advisor before, this is our results view where you can see individual leads, you can see what they've submitted and some scripting for your reps in here. What we're working on now is a new view for you to see what's happening to them after they became a lead. And so in this view, you can actually see, you can see their name, their campus of interest, their program of interest, where they sit in the funnel stage. Right now, Virtual Advisor supports inquiry, appointment, interviewed, and enrollment stages. We sync those bidirectionally with your CRM. We can see when they were first seen. So when did they first become a lead? For these leads, they've all filled out our career training readiness quiz. And then these last three columns are the agent activity. We can see here what the contact status is, whether we've reached these leads, we've managed to have a conversation, or if we're still attempting to make contact, or in the best case scenario, we've managed to book an appointment. So if you can imagine, if you will, you come in on a Monday morning and you pull up this UI and you can see how many of those weekend leads were called, qualified, contact was established, and how many of them were actually booked into reps' calendars.
And of course,
Here in
this
the
is real time. So as we're watching this screen, things are changing because the agents are working away in the background.
That's right. And I'm going to simulate some new leads here in a moment. In this last cell, there's one right here. So we've got Michael Anderson, who's just started taking the career training readiness quiz. And we can see here by this green circle and this green active now that they're in the quiz right now. So we're not going to try to call them while we're in the middle of the quiz. We're going to wait until they reach the end, and then the agent's going to pick them up and try to establish contact. And how they try to establish contact is completely configurable. So in our demo right now, it's going to try to text them, it's going to try to email them, and it's going to try to call them about a minute apart just for a quick demo. But that's entirely configurable. And then in this last scene column here, we can see when we last established contact. So for Michael, he's just started the form. But for Davis here, the last time we spoke to him was 12 hours ago and is actually on a call. If I hover over this, I can see the summary of what happened, where this lead is at, and what the next steps are. And I can see in the sequence column here where in that outreach sequence we establish contact. So for Davis here, we've kind of gone halfway through the planned outreach steps. And you can see here for these ones that had appointments booked, we were actually able to book an appointment. You'll also see here there's an interest level that shows up in the last scene column. And we're trying to gauge, based on the conversation that was had, how interested is this prospect really? And so Brian here was kind of unsure, but some of these other prospects show that they were interested. Some of them are unknown if we weren't able to make that determination. So you can kind of get a bird's eye view of where everybody's at. You don't have to go into individual records and try to figure it out. You get a very quick, easy way to see where all your leads are at. So Michael here is in the middle. I think he's just finished the quiz. I'm going to pull up his record here and see how the agent is trying to establish contact. So this looks kind of like a typical CRM view. It's kind of how we've designed it. On the left, you have the lead profile with all the fields you're used to seeing, things like campus and program of interest, social style from the quiz, etc. And on the right-hand side, we have your typical timeline where you could usually see human activity, except we're showing the AI agent activity. And so as we watch here, the agent's going to try to establish contact. So it sent out an email, which we can look at. And then it also sent out a text. And in a minute here, it's going to try to phone. And if I want to look at the full sequence here, you can see everything I've configured. I've configured 10 steps over a few days to try to establish contact with this lead. If I wanted to, I could pause it. Like if I wanted to just call Michael directly, if I wanted to hand it off to a human rep to handle, I could pause the AI agent at any time and a human could take over. One of the things I want to highlight here on the left-hand side is that the quiz collects all of this extra intelligence. So the agent is not starting with a cold call. The agent is starting with, hey, Michael, I saw you just filled out the quiz. I see you're just starting your research, but you've been interested for some time. And it's able to have a natural conversation like you would train your reps to do with this information. And I'll play a call recording in a moment here. So there it goes. It's just called out to Michael. And if Michael answers the phone, it's going to have a call with him. While that's happening, let me show you what it looks like when somebody books an appointment. So down here, we have Kristen, Kate, and Benjamin that all ended up booking appointments. Let's take a look at Kate here. So what we have here is an AI summary of all of the previous conversation history, including where they're at in the funnel right now. This helps the AI agent know where this particular lead is at and what the next steps are going to be. Because the agent supports not just one point of contact, but any amount of fluid points of contact over multiple modalities. So maybe it establishes communication over text first and the prospect replies back and it's able to carry the conversation over text. Maybe that fizzles out and then the sequence takes over and calls them the next day and says, oh, hey, Kate, we were just talking about job prospects. Would you like to continue to explore that angle? It's able to pick up where the conversation left off as you switch modalities to wherever the prospect is engaging at the time. So we can see here for Kate that she filled out the quiz. It reached out with an email, it reached out with an SMS, and then it reached out with a call, and the call was answered. And so I can see here, I can read the transcription of the call if I want, but I can also play the recording. I'd like to do that for you guys now. Let me know if this is coming through.
Hi, Kate. It's Sophie over at ER College. I noticed you filled in the career readiness form. I saw some really interesting details in the report. Do you have a few minutes to go over it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks. Just to let you know, this call may be recorded for quality and training purposes. So looking at the report, I see HVAC is the program you're interested in and you're hoping for better pay and a different work environment. Is that still on track for you?
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Okay, makes sense. The report also shows you're looking for training that's hands-on, focused on career skills, and can be completed in less than a year. That lines up really well with how our programs are set up. Are you mainly looking to train in person at the Brookside campus, or would you prefer to connect with an advisor over the phone or online for your first meeting?
I think I'm looking for in person.
All right, thanks for clarifying you'd like to meet in person. About your study schedule, since you're not working right now, do you see yourself taking classes during the day and the evening, or is either one fine?
I think I'll need evening classes. I have kids and no childcare.
Thanks for explaining your situation. Let me see what evening times are open for an in-person meeting. All right, there are spots at 7 or 7:30 tomorrow night. Either of those work for you to meet with the admissions assistant at the Brookside campus?
How long do the meetings usually take?
Yeah, the meetings usually run about 30 to 60 minutes. It just depends how many questions you have and how much you want to get into. Still okay to book that for tomorrow evening?
Yeah, 7 o'clock would work.
All right, you're all set for 7 o'clock tomorrow evening at the Brookside campus. The admissions assistant will meet you there to go over the HVAC program and answer your questions. Anything else you want to check before we wrap up?
No, will they give me instructions on where to park when I get there?
Yeah, you can park right on site. There's a big lot at the Brookside campus, and it's free for students and visitors. Just pull in when
Okay.
you arrive. You won't need a pass or anything. I'm glad we caught up. I think.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Take care. Talk
Thank
soon.
you. Take care. Bye.
So that's what a typical appointment might sound like. Now, the
So
interesting
I've
thing
seen
to
this a
note
few
there,
times now. Sorry, I have to jump in there, Andrew. I've seen the interface a few times now. I have trouble containing myself. I want to get out of my seat. I've always thought of the interaction, the interplay between virtual advisor and prospect intelligence and the Connect IQ agent as sort of creating a super agent. But I just had an insight. I think really what it does is it creates a super rep because it provides your admissions rep with so much powerful, useful information in creating real one-on-one relationships, establishing that trust early on. That's so important. That ultimately leads to conversions. Sorry, I had to jump in. I couldn't contain myself, Andrew. I love the UI. I love the interface. I think there is so much here. You're right. We are leaning a little bit into CRM territory. It's just sort of natural. But we do, I want our attendees, our viewers to know that we do integrate with CRMs. We are not a CRM. We don't compete with CRMs. We simply enhance the CRM that you're already using. And we also, for CRMs that are not able to integrate for whatever, technical limitations, we have an incredible solution, and that is an overlay, a browser overlay that sits on top of your CRM, so your admissions reps can still see everything that they need to engage with it without having to integrate with the CRM. So we've got sort of those bases covered. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I want to
yeah,
second what Saj said as well. The UI looks beautiful, and I like Andrew the way that the context has kind of been pulled into the agent. I think that's really cool. That all the information there it's able to kind of pick up on that. And it looks like it's omni-channel as well, if I'm not mistaken. You guys are able to communicate from those different channels, which is really good. The conversation flow as well from the recording, I just want to say was really good. I like that the agent was allowing the prospect to do most of the talking, which I think in a lot of other systems or things that I've seen that I've come across is the agent just talks too much. And
yeah.
it's not really you really want to get the prospect talking about themselves and everything. And I like that you had that set up that way. It's really good.
Yeah,
It
part
took
of
a
that
lot
is
of
that
effort.
the agent is not built on a script. It's not just reading a script. It's actually analyzing, thinking, and responding to that individual and to that question and to that situation. So it's very different from a traditional agent in that sense. It is omnichannel, you're right. But what I love is that it doesn't just send out templated first response, second response, third response. It crafts the text message language and the email language for the individual that it's speaking to and everything that it knows about that, and based on everything it knows about that individual. So it just gets smarter every time it talks to Kate and every time Kate engages with anything, lead forms, surveys, quizzes, response to text messages, response to emails. It's scary good sometimes.
Yeah, so you mentioned a super agent. You got me thinking about how hard it is to train reps consistently. And this is a train it once, apply it everywhere kind of scenario. And one of
Mhm.
the things we were trying to do specifically when we were prepping this agent was to get it to use the social style. Because using the social style to understand how to approach a conversation with a prospect, whether they're analytical or expressive, are generally radically different approaches, and we want to make sure the agent is capable of navigating that. And so the agent it's basically been taught on how to handle all of the possible social styles. There's four of them on what to do, what not to do, where to focus, as well as all of the information we've gathered from the quiz. So we can talk about things like what's motivating you and compare and contrast how the program and the program outcomes can help them get to their goals. And that, just like you were saying, Justin, sets up the value of that appointment so much more if they can personalize the value of talking to a rep. If your goal is to give your kids a better life and we can help you get there, the admissions agent or rep can help you navigate the details to get there.
Yeah, we put something out where we said this is the future of admissions. I really feel strongly about that, and this is the part that I get really passionate about. So I'd love to keep talking about it with you guys. I just noticed that we're at 10 minutes left in our block, so I'm going to suggest, unless there's anything that else that we need to add, we get into some Q&A.
I do have one more view I'd like to show.
Oh, please do.
For the managers in the audience, you might want to see what's happening at an aggregate level. And so in our analytics system, you can see what's going on at a high level, just to see what the engagement's like, what the funnel transitions look like, what your contact rate is, your reply rate, and etc. Pretty typical suite of charts that you'd expect with this kind of feature, but it's all there for you.
Absolutely love it.
With that, I'll give it back to you, Sash.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Justin. Let's switch over to some questions. Sophie, have we had any questions come in through the course of our 50 minutes?
Yes, we do. So we have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So our first question is about the 78% appointment booking rate. Are we able to share the actual show rate and enrollment rate at the bottom of the funnel?
Justin, is that something that you have top of mind and something that you'd be willing to share?
I don't have it on the top of mind because I didn't prepare, but I can tell you now this might have changed. I think it was a few months back. We measured the cost per acquisition, and it was about 6 times cheaper to acquire the student through the specific channels that we were using, Meta, and they paired with the AI admissions agent versus the Google traditional kind of human workflows. So we were quite happy with the efficiency, something that we're looking to scale up now.
That's amazing, Justin. There's another question here that says, does the prospect know that it is AI that they're speaking with?
I love this question because this was the same question that our admissions team had to me. And their general feeling was, hey, okay, I want to preference as well. It's so you have to tell it's an AI in certain states or regions. We're located in Canada. And so when the student actually inquires, we actually opt them in through the marketing channels. So the AI doesn't have to kind of straight up say, hey, I'm an AI on the initial greeting of the phone call. Now, if they ask about it, obviously it mentions this, right? But in Canada, in terms of the compliance, we're allowed to kind of opt them in that way. And so I love this question because I actually got into the data and I looked through, the transcripts and everything. And the overall number was 2.7%. So if you worked 1,000 leads, roughly 27 people asked if it was an AI. So the mass majority of them either had very little indication that it was an AI or just didn't really care. Maybe they knew, but they just kind of continued through with the conversation. So I found that quite interesting. I'm not saying, to try to trick your students or anything like that, but over here, we kind of opt them in through the marketing channels. So I definitely advise you to look into the compliance area, like what you can and can't do. I think in a lot of the states, you do have to kind of mention it's AI right off the get-go. So that, definitely look into it. But the other kind of side to it was for those the 2.7% of students that actually, asked, hey, is this an AI? I want to see how many of them actually continue the conversation and how many of them asked to speak to a human advisor. And for us, the numbers were 70% of them actually continued to speak and eventually book the appointment. And 30% of them asked to speak to a human advisor immediately. So, or just weren't interested in talking to the AI. So just to give you some numbers there, but I love that question because I think everyone's perspective is like, hey, they're going to feel awkward talking to it. I just don't think that that's the case after I looked into the numbers and kind of listened to the recordings and stuff. It's very natural. So
I
if you
love
have
that
the
you
right
guys dug
system.
into the numbers like that. And I think with the demographic that we're dealing with, I mean, I remember, in a previous life in the CRM business, there was a lot of resistance to text messaging prospects. There was a certain group of people that we worked with that felt that was intrusive. And now you would never think twice about it. I think with for the majority of our prospect demographic, they're much more open to AI than maybe other people are. So I think that's an interesting observation. But I love that you guys dug into the numbers like that. Um, I think there was a question there. Is this AI agent available for ER leads alone who fill out the career assessment quiz, or can it be connected to our CRM for all leads? So it's entirely up to you. It can manage leads from specific lead sources on certain days within certain hours, whose favorite color is orange, or it can be opened up to all of your leads. So it's highly customizable. I also just really quickly want to piggyback on the question around whether we need to be transparent about whether it's an AI agent. So we worked with 500 schools. We have been around for almost 20 years. Probably 70% of our client base is in the US. So we are intimately familiar with the compliance and regulatory requirements, not just on a national level in Canada and the US, but also on a state by state basis. So we can help with that question as well. All right, Sophie, should we move on to the next question?
Great. Yeah. So there's another virtual advisor question here as well, just asking for some information about cost.
Sure. So we are very close to determining a cost for Connect IQ. There's a lot of pricing models out there. We wanted to stay away from a pay-per-use pricing model. I think it really just commoditizes what is a phenomenal product. And so the stage that we're at right now, and we want to be fully transparent about this, is that we are collecting data from pilot programs. That data will help us further determine performance, expectations, and then we can build some pricing around that. So give us, 2 or 3 weeks. We're going to be much closer to the pricing question.
Amazing. We do have another question here, just asking if it's possible to get a clip of the AI interaction with Test Katie. So we will be sending out a recording of the webinar after this call. But you can also reach out to our team. We do custom demos too.
Yes, and yes, and for those that want to reach out personally after the session, I can direct you to a link where you can have as many conversations as you want with the AI agent. All right, we've got 2 minutes left, Sophie. Maybe one or two more questions if we've got the time. And thanks for putting this screen up. Sterling and I are going to be at the following events over the coming 2 or 3 months. If you're attending, we would love to talk to you and do a deeper dive into Connect IQ and Virtual Advisor.
Amazing. Yeah, I think we're coming to the end of our questions here. There's another one that's very similar to the question about whether we let people know that they're talking to an AI agent. But it's just around our strategy on how to identify the AI agent at the start of the call.
Justin, you want to take that one?
Yeah. And I think this comes down to compliance. So you have to look it up for your local state laws and everything. I like to call them virtual assistants, but it all depends on the compliance. Like you really have to look into your compliance laws, what you can't say. But I think from what I've seen is most people seem to be open to speaking, even if they're aware that it's an AI. So I wouldn't shy away from saying, "Hey, this is a AI virtual admissions, whatever it might be." You probably have to do a little bit of strategy on that, but yeah.
Great. I hope we've answered all of your questions. Please feel free to reach out personally. And Andrew, Justin, I would be happy to respond to any other questions that come up after the fact. You can also scan this QR code. We can do a deep dive with your team, talk about our experience with Connect IQ, Virtual Advisor, and the other services that we offer to schools. Thank you all for joining us for the hour. Really appreciate your time and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. This is the future.